Hello, and welcome to AI News that you should know about for the week of October 31st. I'm your host, Ashley Coffey.
And I'm Daniel Hill. Every week, in about 15 minutes, we cover the top AI news stories that you should know about. This week, we'll be talking about ChatGPT and a PayPal integration as it enters the e commerce space. We'll also be talking about the new updated Microsoft and OpenAI partnership, the details of it, and the implications. We'll talk about AI browsers and how they are a cybersecurity threat. And we'll also talk about a new nuclear power plant being brought back online because of Google.
We'll be covering all of that on our show today. But first, here's a quick word from our sponsors. Welcome back. All right, let's dive in. Our top story this week, ChatGPT enters e-commerce mode with PayPal integration. So let's talk about it. This is an interesting step forward because PayPal's tens of millions of merchants will soon be able to be discoverable in ChatGPT, which can help consumers connect to businesses that they love. And this partnership unlocks the convenience of what we know as PayPal and an instant checkout. And it also will support different delegated payments API, which will be really good for developers to be able to integrate this. So, under this partnership, PayPal is also expanding its AI strategy with OpenAI beyond e commerce. So, they'll be scaling access to ChatGPT Enterprise for its 24,000 employees, enabling engineers with codecs and broadly expanding direct use of OpenAI's APIs. So, what that means is together it'll empower PayPal to accelerate their product development, boost employee upskilling, reskilling, and impact, and raise the bar on customer service experiences and expectations. So, this is an exciting time for PayPal, as we know. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts, Daniel?
The article referenced that PayPal will support OpenAI instant checkout, meaning that you could search for a product and do the checkout all from within ChatGPT, if I understand that correctly. So,
Yeah.
therefore, if there's a product you're interested in, you're not sure what it is or where to find it, ChatGPT can not only identify the product, but then help you purchase it without you needing to open a separate tab for Amazon or Temu or any other site. Why do you need to search all these different sites? ChatGPT do that for you, make it seamless, make it integrated, and maybe you don't need to use those big box purchasers or retailers that we have been using for so long. Just let the AI figure out what's the right one and take care of the rest. I love that concept.
That's right. Do what you do best, hire out the rest, and just let it take that mental load off of you for trying to hunt for the best deal because you know that the machines can do it much faster than we can visually. So I'm excited about this. However, I do think with these new innovations comes opportunity for exploitation. So we shall see. I guess we'll just cross that bridge when we get there. All right, so this next one is pretty good. The next chapter of the Microsoft and OpenAI partnership. So before we actually got on this call, Daniel and I were talking about this just a little bit because there's a lot to unpack here. So let me give you just some high level tidbits. So Microsoft and OpenAI have entered a new definitive agreement to advance their partnership, building on what they started in 2019. So this means Microsoft will support OpenAI's transformation into becoming a public benefit corporation, a PBC, and has made an investment. So OpenAI's group PBC will value Microsoft's stake at approximately $135 billion, representing around 27% on an as converted diluted basis. That includes employees, investors, OpenAI Foundation, and the new structure. But here's where it gets interesting. Microsoft retains exclusive IP rights and Azure API exclusivity until AGI is declared by OpenAI. So some refinements and additions to the rights and responsibilities of this agreement is that the AGI declaration by OpenAI will have to be verified by an independent expert panel who have no connections to OpenAI or Microsoft. And this one is interesting. Microsoft's IP rights for models and products, meaning the actual language learning models, are extended through 2032, and research IP rights extend until 2030 or until verification of AGI, whichever comes first. And Microsoft IP rights now exclude OpenAI's consumer hardware. Interesting one there that we'll dive into. But this last one OpenAI agreed to purchase an additional 250 billion US dollars in Azure services. Microsoft no longer has the quote right of first refusal to be OpenAI's compute provider. And then last but not least here, OpenAI may provide API access to US government national security customers regardless of their cloud provider. All right, what are your thoughts here, Daniel?
This list of 12 bullets, I think we could probably talk for 10 minutes on each one, what it means, what it doesn't mean, and what we don't know is behind what we're reading. All the ones that you picked, I think, are worth discussing. But the one that jumps out to me the most is that Microsoft's IP rights now exclude OpenAI's consumer hardware. To make
Mhm.
for Microsoft to make such a large investment in OpenAI, get the rights to whatever consumer hardware OpenAI is working on, says to me that's going to be a really big thing whenever OpenAI launches a hardware product, and they don't want Microsoft to benefit from that in any way, shape, or form. And that's where they think they are really going to have a chance at revolutionizing the market in some way, shape, or form. I don't know what that means. I could be reading into it way too much, but I think that bullet really says a lot in just a few words. What do you think, Ashley?
I would put money on Johnny Ive as the reason for that bullet point. Because if you think about it, for those that are listening, Johnny Ive was at Apple for years and was responsible for working with Steve Jobs on the iconic original iPhone design, the iPod Classic, and much more. And when he joined OpenAI this summer, that signaled that OpenAI is getting serious about figuring out what that hardware is going to look like. Like they don't know, they're figuring it out. And this right here for me is Johnny Ive screaming, I do not want any product affiliation with Microsoft to dilute my own personal brand and the brand of like product excellence that he brings. And not to mention, he comes from Apple and Microsoft have traditionally not been on the same page. So that's my thought there for that bullet point.
Do you think that is just a long-standing feeling that came because of the Microsoft Zune and Johnny Ive working so hard on the iPod and the iPhone? It just circles back
Yes.
to however long ago it was that the Zune came out. That's hilarious.
I'm glad you mentioned the Zune. So for those listening, please look it up. I'm glad I didn't buy one, but man, I really wanted one when they were there. They were the coolest things ever. But yeah, just I really do think some history of technology, even though it may have been 20 years ago, it's still coming into play today. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll be talking about AI browsers are a cybersecurity time bomb, and another shuttered nuclear power plant is getting new life thanks to big tech.
Welcome back. Let's continue with our stories. The next one, AI browsers are a cybersecurity time bomb. This one's coming from The Verge. Here's what you need to know to get up to speed. Over the past few weeks, researchers have uncovered vulnerabilities in the ChatGPT Atlas browser, OpenAI's Atlas browser, that allows attackers to take advantage of the memory that ChatGPT has from prior conversations and inject malicious code, grant themselves access privileges, and deploy malware. The other browsers that are powered by AI, like Comet, have similar flaws and vulnerabilities where attackers could hijack the browser's AI with hidden instructions. This boils down to really all the threats that are possible using a web browser in general, but how much worse that potentially is with an AI browser, because the AI knows much more about you than your normal browser. And there's a memory. The AI remembers previous tasks you asked it to do, previous conversations, and builds off those. So there's access to a lot more data. You're sharing more with an AI browser than you would with a regular browser. So there's more potential for vulnerabilities and issues. Even more so, though, is the fact that these AI browsers take action on behalf of a user. So
That's it.
they might go to a website that you as a user would say, well, that's a suspect website. I would never go there. The AI might not know that. It might go there. It might click on a link that it shouldn't. It has access to so much of your data that it could potentially make a mistake and share in a place that it shouldn't. It hasn't learned common sense necessarily. So there's a lot of potential here for bad behavior. And the icing on the cake for this is, and the article makes the point, that because this is all automated, these things can happen again and again until it's quote unquote successful, meaning not for you, not from a user perspective, but successful in getting that malicious link clicked on or the form filled out or whatever it is. The AI will keep trying until it gets it right. So I think there's a lot of potential for issues here. Ashley, what do you think?
I'm really glad that you picked this one, Daniel, because actually I hesitated whenever I was downloading the new GPT Atlas because it requires full disk access. And I have a Mac and I don't let anything have full disk access unless it's like a very specific need for. So I thought that it was interesting, and I didn't have to grant full disk access permission for comment, which is assuring to me knowing that that is staying contained. But what I've been doing is segmenting my browser use based on use case. So, for example, for Comet, since they were first to market with, or Perplexity's Comet, they were first to market with the agentic. I was using that for some things that were too manual, but rudimentary enough to not have too high of a risk. Color all of the cells that have these criteria blue. I don't know. Think smarter, not harder. But this is a real serious threat that I don't think we're taking seriously enough because you're right. AI is going to glean so much contextual nuance out of us that sheer data scraping that we know of isn't going to hold a candle to what's about to be produced. So we'll see what happens here.
And I think even people who make mistakes, clicking on the wrong thing, clicking on a link they shouldn't have, of course, that can happen.
Yeah.
At some point, the AI will be better than a human at knowing, don't click on that. But until that happens, I think there's a lot of potential for problems. So I'm definitely going to be cautious about using an AI browser now that I've read this article. Let's go on to our last article. Other nuclear power plant that has been shut previously is getting new life. So, just a little bit of background. Microsoft announced plans last year to bring the reactor at 3 Mile Island that had been turned off previously back online in 2028. And now Google has announced plans to bring a nuclear power plant that was shut in 2020 back online. This power plant is going to be, or exists already in Iowa, and Google is slated to start running it again in 2029. Why do major companies keep wanting to turn nuclear power plants back on? Well, they need power to uh, run all this AI. A lot of electricity is needed. Nuclear seems to be the fastest and quickest way to generate the power needed in order to do that. Ashley, what are your thoughts?
I'm glad that you picked this because it reminds me of a time in 2014, 15, when I was working at the Apple store and this guy from NASA came in and he was a legit NASA scientist. And I was like really interested in the work that he was doing. And he told me, like, point blank, it's up to your generation to save us. And if you can figure out how to get nuclear energy and space, like to be able to harness nuclear energy that's nuclear, for example, like a nuclear power plant in space, but being able to harness that, then our problems would be solved. And I was like, it's Tuesday. I don't know if I'm ready for this conversation.
That's a tall order, right?
Yeah, but yeah, it's interesting. The demand needs for AI are huge, and water is a precious resource that we need as humans, and AI needs even more of as a machine. So we're really going to have to start thinking through alternative energy sources.
All right, that is it for our AI news that you should know about this week. And now, Ashley's AI tip of the week.
Yes. So there's so many tips out there, and I like to do useful tips that are easy to digest. So I wanted to share Apple Visual Intelligence. If you have an Apple iPhone, it's really cool. It allows you to take a quick photo of whatever it is and quickly search if it's your glasses or something you want to buy. Very similar to Google Lens. But the second tip here, it's like point one tip, and you can actually take all of your data sets and put them into ChatGPT to clean them up. Long story short, we like to see things a certain way as humans, and machines need information sorted in a certain way to be able to digest that. So think smarter, not harder. If you're trying to analyze data sets, use GPT to clean them up for you. Have it ask you questions on best practices for cleaning up the data based on what it's found. And that can really save you a lot of a headache down the road.
Love that. All right. You can find links to everything we've talked about today in the show notes, and you can connect with us on social media. We'd love to hear what you think of the show and how we can make it better. You can find me on Instagram, Threads, and YouTube at Daniel Hill Media.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of AI News that you should know about. If you want more tech talk, you can find me on Instagram at AshleyRCoffee89. And wherever you find podcasts, you can find my other podcast called Coffee and Code, where we talk through the latest innovations and the experts in the fields that are using innovative technology to empower business. But if you want to take the next step on implementing AI in your business, reach out to me. I specialize in that through Coffee and Consult. And I love helping to bridge the gap between technology and people through innovative technology solutions.
Thank you so much for listening, and come back next week for more AI news that you should know about.